Let me bring in my guest who is joining us via Zoom.
Okay.
That's actually Mr. Steve Okafo, actually. He's the CEO of Kofana Securities and Investments Limited. Welcome to Market Insight, Mr. Okafo.
Yes, good morning. It's nice having you. It's nice being on your show today.
So just before I get back to you, actually, I was actually going to delve further with Mr. Hyacinth as to, yes, we know we actually need help from outside countries, actually, but the key factor here, getting help, actually, you said we should swallow our pride. It doesn't matter who we get this help from, but do we really need to be importing at this point? I want to be if we're looking for a more sustainable solution, provide security for farmers, and then emphasize on our local food production as to going outside to always getting help from European countries.
Is that for me?
Yes.
Okay, so
I
mean, there are two strategies to it. Okay, the first one is short term.
Yes.
The second one is long term. Okay, we can't, send workers, farmers to farm at the short run. Okay, so the short term policy intervention is where can you get grain from? Okay, so the long term is, has policy deal with insecurity and be able to send, farmers back to the farm, yes, provide them with all the grains that they need to farm and the support that they need. Yes. That will be long term. But, on the short run, we need help. And wherever we can get help from, we just need to go out and get help. Yeah.
Okay, those are your thoughts. Yeah. Those are your thoughts, Mr. Hyacinth. Okay, Mr. Okafo, thank you for joining us on Market Insight this morning. I'm sure, yes, Mr. Okafo, are you here with us? Okay. Joining us on Market Insight this morning. So I'm sure you have observed the increase in the price of food items, is not just with grains, even our wholesale food items, things like yam, things like beans. Actually, these prices have increased to over 150%. Now, what would you suggest as to actually help with this, reducing the cost of this food inflation? What do you recommend? What would you suggest if you were in a position of government to actually give us some kind of breath of relief to help us with this situation?
Yeah, fortunately, I had a little bit of your guest in the studio, and he's not far from the truth. The biggest challenge we are having right now in Nigeria is insecurity, farmers' herders' crisis. As long as that situation persists, farmers won't have unfettered access to farmlands. And if they don't have unfettered access to farmlands, how will the products from the farms get to the consumers? You understand? So it's a big issue that the government need to look at. Let me digress a little bit. Because of the nature of my job, I've seen a situation where I keep telling those in the capital market that the government is taking the wrong position in trying to address inflation by increasing the MPR, the monetary policy rate. That's not the solution. The solution to our inflation is increase in food production and access roads from the villages to the cities. The government needs to do a lot about infrastructures as well. That is it.
You feel that the government not improving on our infrastructure, not improving on our road network is what is causing this hike in our food prices, and if they can actually work on creating better roads from the villages down to the urban centers, you believe that this would actually curb the food inflation? Yes. Mr. Okafo.
It's part of it. It's part of it. Are you hearing me? Are you there? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, network. You can hear me. It's part of it. I said, aside from solving the insecurity issues, road network counts a lot. Don't forget that most of our products from the farms are perishable products. So if they don't easily get to the consumers on time, you know what will happen to those products. So road networks and solving insecurity issues are the twin factors that need to look at for if we need to fight or make sure that prices come down to the barest minimum.
Okay. Okay, just before I get back to it, let me just share with my guest in the studio, Mr. Hyacinth. Yes, you just heard his opposing position on this view. Now, the African Development Bank donated this amount to us, and in addition, they're also supporting with, like I said, 300,000 hectares of land and 150,000 hectares of land also to grow our grains like maize, like cassava. But in light of all these economic challenges, do you really think that this $134 million will contribute effectively to curb food inflation in the economy?
Well, I think it's a major one. It's a major contribution. Okay. Like I said before, okay, two factors, economic factors that is affecting our economy today, majorly inflation, which affect prices. And, the second one is the exchange rates, okay? Yes. Yeah, we don't have enough demand, enough supply. So if you have supply coming in foreign exchange, that has impact on the economy, all right? Yes. Okay, you know that apart from the land, I'm surprised that you says that the bank, the African Bank, is giving us land. Giving us land.
They're supporting us with that. They said they want to support. Okay. Actually, we have the arable land.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
They're going to support by providing the seedlings and
ensuring
that we have
naturally, So like he said, one of the things that needs to be addressed, as far as I'm concerned, is security, so that the farmers can go back to farm. So if the farmer can go back to farm, and you have this support, from African Development Bank, is going to go a long way in ensuring that we increase our productivity, our food productivity, and that's going to impact the food security in our nation. So I think it's going to have a major impact on the bottom line.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Mr. Okafo, actually, you've heard my guest in the studio. Yes, the funds that were donated by the African Development Bank, he is of the opinion that it will definitely be able to impact on to curb the food inflation in Nigeria and also help local farmers with production of food items. And you also stated that what our government really needs to do is to improve on infrastructure to help. So getting grants like the $134 million from African Development Bank and also getting more grains from countries like Ukraine would also, it might help, according to my colleague here. But are you also of that same view, Mr. Okafo?
I'm of the same view, because let's look at that $134 million. Converted to Naira at 1,500 Naira to $1, that's well over 200 billion. And 200 billion, if shared equally without piffering it, if shared to all the states, including FCT, can do 5 million for 1,000 farmers in every of the states. The other day I was asking a friend, if I give you 5,000 as a farmer, what will you do with it? And he said it's quite a huge amount of money. So you understand. So if the federal government, if that money comes from AFDB and is allocated for what it was donated for, and the farmers use it. Now there's another thing to it. We need to monitor those that got allocation from this money. They must be monitored. That's why we have agri departments in all in our ministries. Let them monitor. It's actually a pity that we are living in an agrarian society like Nigeria, and we're having food shortage. For me, is unacceptable.
Okay, yes, totally unacceptable, because all over the country, the north, south, east, west, with all the lands that we have in this country are totally 100% arable, suitable for farming any kind of crop that we need to farm, actually. So recently also, in addition to that, it was observed that the grain wheat, due to climate changes, it's not so suitable being grown in certain parts of the country. So we've also been looking into research on how to grow more tolerant wheat grains that can be resistant to the heat in Nigeria. As you know, in Nigeria, we have the rainy season and the dry season, so it's not going to be easy to just plant wheat and believe, okay, with our good land, or rather our fertile land, to just grow immediately. So how do you see actually improving on our technology to actually invest in more seedlings that can actually survive these climatic conditions that we have in Nigeria? I'll start with Mr. Hyacinth first of all.
Okay, I mean, life is about improvement. Life is about innovation. Life is about looking for the variants of weeds, okay, that can bring more productivity. If you go to countries like Israel, you find out what innovation and research and development has done in the productivity of agricultural products. So you see that even with minimum land, the level of productivity is so high, compared to all the lands that we have. So the way to go is research and development, how we can, have, the variance of those grains and those agricultural products, that can produce maximally in our own environment. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the way to go.
Okay, so Mr. Okafo, actually, the government has actually looked into improving our farming methods, but actually getting seedlings, wheat seedlings that can be heat resistant, that can still produce the crops actually effectively, whether we're in dry season or in the rainy season. How do you see improvements on our technology to actually improve on our local food production, Mr. Okafo?
Yeah, just to add to what your guests in the studio there have mentioned, yes, technology is the way to go in everything in life right now. Why we do those research? I'm also looking at a different view entirely, a different view in terms of, yes, we may not do a research on how to improve wheat and all that, but we know that international trade is about, measuring on where you have your strength. We have palm oil. And I know that some other countries that have good quality wheat may need palm oil. Why can't we go ahead and measure on our strength and export to those countries, or do what you call commodity exchange? It's part of the things we need to look out for. You understand? We are blessed with land, we are blessed with good weather, and we have the human beings, the human capital to do this. Let's lay less emphasis on oil. We have things that can improve our resources in this country, and agriculture is one of them.
Okay, sorry, there was a bit of an audio issue, but I can hear you clearly, Mr. Okafo. Okay, yes, in addition to that, most Nigerian households this period, we have been struggling financially because of the rising cost of inflation. In addition, the rising cost of food items, and it's not relenting anytime soon. When we go to the markets, even our local grocery stores, we always experience this. Food prices on Monday are different from food prices on Tuesday. And yes, the government keeps saying they are putting measures in place in terms of releasing grains, in terms of saying let's focus more on producing locally so that we can improve our food production. But actually looking at this current, how does this impact the communities, or rather the households that are struggling to survive, struggling to feed well? Because if this food inflation is not effectively curbed, Nigerian children might be growing up not eating the proper amount of nutrients to help their bodies develop. So I'll start first of all with Mr. Okafo, then I'll move to Mr. Hyacinth. Mr. Okafo, are you here with us?
I'm with you there. It will surprise you to know that some of the staples you're talking of that go up in price at the groceries are actually imported. You will be shocked to know that if you are given the statistics of the raw tomatoes that come into this country through our neighboring countries, you'll be shocked. And if they are not grown here in Nigeria and we have to import them, then invariably means that the exchange rate will affect their price. So that is the reason why you see a price today, you go back to the groceries tomorrow, you see a different price. Exchange rate has affected their price. And that is what we are talking of, that as long as the insecurity issue is not solved, as long as the road networks are not taken care of, we will continue seeing this kind of fluctuation in prices and worsening standard of living. You understand? So the federal government needs to sit up. Solving our insecurity problem is not rocket science. It's just a pity that possibly the government of the day have decided to play what I will call games with our insecurity situation. And this is what we are suffering today. Farmers can have access to their lands, and as long as they cannot go to farm, where would the commodities come from? That's the truth.
Okay, yes, as usual, Mr. Okafo is, yes, still laying the blame on the government, saying if we do not improve on infrastructure, things will not actually get better in terms of improving on our local food production, no matter how much support we get from Western countries, actually. Okay, this is actually interesting. So, okay, yes, so this recent initiative, yes, we've appreciated our foreign donors for what they've been contributing to us, but looking at it in the future, actually, does this, by extension, actually, does it also enhance the quality of life for the ordinary Nigerians, actually? Because a lot of people, yes, we talk on TV stations, we talk on our programs like this. How does it impact the common man on the streets? I also have to go back to that again, because all this talk and no action, I don't really think it's going to help anybody in the long run. So, okay, Mr. Hyacinth.
Okay, I think the point is made. You know, the solution to our problem is that we need to feed ourselves. Okay, yeah, so people should be encouraged, you know, to go back and produce at least what they can eat.
How do you want them to produce what they can eat?
Everybody go to farm.
Everybody
go to farm. You know, they need to encourage everybody, you know, to go to farm. We're not even talking about producing for export now. Produce what you can eat. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I remember that when I was in secondary school, we used to do agri science in school. I don't know how many of, you know, the urban schools, you know, does anything like agri science. I don't even think they have access to farmland, all right? Okay, so those things needs to be encouraged. People used to have gardens in their homes where they grow, you know, all manner of things. You know, the solution is, I know that my brother talked about the road infrastructure. You know, road infrastructure is if you want to sell what you have produced. But let's start from producing what we can eat. That is the beginning of solving the food crisis problem. All those people there, you know, like he said, I mean, the money that was given, you know, he broke it down to what could be, you know, each of the local government. Imagine that you form cooperative within the various local governments. You know, ask people to go to farm, all right? And you support them with those funds. And, you know, people can go to farm without interference from all these, you know, bandits and what have you. Before you know it, we can produce enough food, you know, to feed ourselves. So for me, that is where to start. All those people you say are hungry, you know, give them access to the farmland.
Just like that?
I mean, that's what it takes.
I mean, this is, you know, Lagos is a very urban center, actually. It's not very easy for people to have access to farmland.
No, that's not correct. If you go to Ekpe, there are farmlands.
But how many of us are closer to that access? You know, I'm talking
about
within our communities, within our own neighborhoods.
I agree with you. If there is a, what's called, intention to do it. Okay, all right? I mean, if you look at churches today, if churches want people to come to their church, they keep buses everywhere.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter, you know, where you are in Lagos, they will bring you to their church. So if we have land and we have people all over, if the government is serious about it, all you need to do is that even, you know, most of these manufacturing companies, you know, production companies that have their, you know, factories in Agbara and all that, they have these long, you know, trucks that convey their workers, you know, to their place. So it is not an issue of distance. It's the issue of intentionality. It's the issue of what is government focused. It's the issue of what is important to us. It's the issue of what are we working on right now. What do we think is the solution to our problem? And if we know it and we focus on it, it doesn't matter. Our problem, like you said, is not rocket science. It is not. It's solvable.
Okay, so Mr. Okafo, actually, yes, my guest in the studio, Mr. Hyacinth, has said we all need to actually look at that, look at investing in agriculture, going back to the farmlands, have your own small garden at the back of your house if it need be, actually. I'm quite sure you'll be pleased to hear this, Mr. Okafo.
Yes, and to add to what he has said, let me also let me say a few things here. If let's assume, like you mentioned, that you are living in Lagos, you don't live where you can have a garden. Yes, it's okay. But if the people living in Ekpe, those living in Ikorodu, can have their own small garden and do their own small farming and even grow their own foods, invariably means that a little that will trickle into Lagos For people like you that don't have garden, we come at a cheaper price. Don't you think so?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, it will, it might, yes, in the long run, actually, yes, it will affect. I'm still here with my guest in the studio, Mr. Hyacinth, and my guest online via Zoom, Mr. Steve Okafo. So we're discussing the impact of the African Development Bank, the $134 million loan, and how it's going to affect agriculture in Nigeria, how it's also going to affect our local food production, and in addition to that, how it will actually curb this current inflation, the food inflation, which is over 35% in the country. And my guests have provided suggestions such as improving on our farming methods. Apart from that, the government also needs to look at technology advancement, actually looking into how we can improve on food production, technology advancement, improving on our infrastructure also. So just our final thoughts on this matter. Yes, I know we have been going back and forth on it, and we also mentioned, yes, if we all become local, if we become farmers in our own little way by getting a small garden at our backyards or getting land in a very sizable quantity and actually farming or employ people who can do that for us, we can actually sustain ourselves with our own food production. So our final thoughts on this, let me start with Mr. Hyacinth. Actually, this is right here in the studio with me. So what are your final thoughts on this matter?
Okay, my final thought is that the interventions, on the short run will help us. Okay, but it had to be both short-term and long-term strategy.
Yes.
The short-term strategy is get, intervention wherever you can get it. Okay, so that we can cushion the effects of all the economic policies that the government is putting in place in trying to solve our economic problem. But in the long run, solve security problem, give people incentive to go to farming. Yes. Let's begin to produce what we can eat. And if we're able to have, self-sufficiency in food production, yes, then we can begin to talk about exports. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, and thank you for that, Mr. Hyacinth. And also, Mr. Steve Okafo, your final thoughts on this situation right now.
Understand that food shortage in Nigeria is not acceptable. We must, that is a decision that both the government and each individual should go take away, that this food insecurity is not acceptable. We can't be living in a country where we have arable lands and we have good weather and we are facing food inflation. The government of the day must solve insecurity, just like your guests in the studio there have mentioned. The government of the day must solve insecurity, and we on our own must do everything humanly possible to help ourselves and get out of this mess.
For that, Mr. Steve Okafo. Thank you very much for joining me on Market Insight this morning. We look forward to having you on our next episode or any other episode on Market Insight. Do enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Okafo. And thank you so much, Mr. Hyacinth, for joining me on Market Insight this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great having you. I hope next time you'll come on our show again.
By the grace of God. Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's look at the official CBN rates and the parallel market rates for the selling rates. How is the Naira faring against the dollar? How both officially and unofficially, actually. Yes, we know the prices have been fluctuating, but we're hopeful that a certain level can be reached that can be, it must really affect us so much. So today, the selling rate, the official selling rates, yes. So the dollar, the Naira is actually buying the dollar, selling the dollar rather at 1,000 officially, at the CBN official rates at 1,490 Naira. That's for the dollar and the official Central Bank of Nigerian rates. And the pound sterling at the official CBN rate is going for 1,911 Naira. That's the official Central Bank of Nigeria rate. And the euro is going for 1,638 Naira. And in the parallel market, our unofficial market, the dollar is selling for 1,610 Naira. The pound sterling is selling for 2,050 Naira. And the euro is selling for 1,750 Naira. So this is an increase from the figures that we had yesterday in the parallel markets, actually. This is quite high from the figures that we had yesterday. So those are our figures in the official CBN rates and in the parallel market rates, actually. The Naira is actually selling quite high as usual in the parallel market rates. Yes. So that was our package this morning on Market Insights, from discussing the activities that took place at the stock market yesterday with the launching of Transcorp Power Limited on the Nigerian stock market, and also discussing the African Development Bank contribution to agriculture, giving us a certain amount of money, $134 million, and how it's going to impact on agriculture in Nigeria, actually. So that's our package. And my guest in the studio that I discussed it with said government needs to actually improve on technology, that we can work together to improve our local food production by gardening or getting more land to actually garden, or if possible, perhaps we could employ people to do this for us. And my guest via Zoom said government needs to actually improve on infrastructure and building roads, building more accessible roads that can move food from the villages to the urban centers, and we can actually be able to sustain ourselves with food before we can start thinking of exporting food items. So that was what we discussed this morning on Market Insights. It was a pleasure doing this with you. I look forward to doing this tomorrow also. I remain your host. I am Lovina Emma. Do stay tuned for continuous programming on Souk News.